In this lesson, we're going to discuss how I was hacked several years ago and what my solution was. So first of all, let's talk about the hack. Here's a drawing of my configuration at the time I got hacked. And the iPhone was either hacked via cell tower, some other Wi-Fi, or by my router. My consumer router had a very strong password, so it's likely that they got in using the iPhone, which means that the Wi-Fi connectivity let them get into my router. Once they got into the router, then they hacked the router and changed my router configuration. So that's what apparently took place. Then what they did, they got additional Trojan software on my computers, and they sat there and they watched me as I used my computer for several weeks, and they changed all the passwords that I used. They changed with something so I couldn't access those sites. One thing that with these passwords, they never bothered to steal anything. They just messed with me by changing the passwords. I learned over time that once a computer was hacked, it would flash a brief text on the screen during the boot up. So that's how I could tell if it was hacked or not. I used a remote location computer to recover all my passwords, which were then changed to something else. This required correspondence and documented proof of who I was. I couldn't do email password recovery because they changed all my email passwords. So after that fiasco, I finally figured out that if the BIOS had a password on it, the system restorer would fix the computer and remove the hack. If the BIOS did not have a password on it, then they would reflash the BIOS and put their own password on it. I also learned later that once they got ticked off, they could actually damage the BIOS so that it wouldn't boot no matter what I did. I also discovered with time that this particular Trojan hacked anything with Bluetooth on the device. I mean, it hacked my Roku, my Fire Stick, it hacked the iPhone, I hacked the laptops, and it was anything that had Bluetooth. I stayed offline at home for about 2 months, didn't even try to access the internet. And I learned a little bit about Microtech routers. I also bought a couple of cheap Pi Zeros, and I discovered that if I just plugged in a Fire Stick, just put power on a Fire Stick, it would hack the Pi Zero within 30 seconds. So it was definitely a Bluetooth thing going on to hack it that quick. So I reformatted a lot of micro SD cards on the Pi Zeros, so I got this all figured out. Then I decided I would go ahead and switch to Plan B. So in Plan B, I switched to this configuration. My ISP provided a telco router, and I just used the 2 ports on the router. One fed my Microtech router number 1, and the other port fed my Microtech router number 2. And this way I didn't care if they hacked the telco router. It didn't matter to me because my router 1 and router 2 could not talk to each other, even if the telco router was hacked. So basically I put all my Wi-Fi stuff on router 1, and even though I had functional connectivity back to the Ethernet, nothing was on the Ethernet circuit, so it couldn't do anything. And my router 2, all it had was password access. I didn't know about SSH keys at that time, but there was no wireless package installed on this router, and I actually removed the physical coupling capacitors to the antennas and discovered that it now had a 2-foot range of connecting with Wi-Fi. So as long as I kept this stuff 2 foot away from this router, I was okay. So then I went ahead and plugged in my remaining desktop, my remaining laptop on Ether 2 and Ether 3. And just with the password protection, this has worked for almost 2 years without any incident. So I think this is a good configuration. Now, if your situation, you only have a 1-port modem instead of a router from your ISP, you would probably need a second Microtech router, one to act as a bridge here, or just a regular bridge, $10 bridge unit too. And then you could connect both routers to that single port on the ISP modem. So this was the solution. It could be your solution. You know, these routers are so cheap, $24, and it is very secure. There's no way it can be hacked. You just can't, because there's no way to get from these Wi-Fi's down here. They would have to hack the input to this router. I'd have to hack the input to that router. And since I now have SSH keys on the routers, that's not happening. So I'm very confident this is a very secure way to operate your home installation. If you want to stick with one router, then our next lesson will get into ways of doing that. But nothing is more secure than this physical diversity router configuration as shown here. 2 years ago, I was pretty much running scared when it came to this problem I had, so I actually broke off the surface mounted capacitor feeds antenna for the Wi-Fi portion of this router. I think that's totally unnecessary today because no wireless package, the operating system can't deal with the wireless hardware. And since you have a SSH secure access to this router, then they can't change that. So I think just having the no wireless package is more than enough with an SSH key access. Now, as far as the desktops go, they got to have no Wi-Fi card or Wi-Fi module on a laptop. That includes your Bluetooth. So you can't have Wi-Fi connectivity or Bluetooth connectivity in these machines over here on this network. And also don't forget to include the secure DNS as described back in lesson 5, showing you how to do that so that your router cannot have a middleman in the middle as far as DNS searches go. As you already know, most of today's printers have Wi-Fi built into them too, so I didn't trust my printers either. I have this old LaserJet Brother printer. So I simply use USB connectivity. I plug a USB cable from the printer into the computer I want to use it with. And I have another printer, a Canon wide carriage inkjet printer. I do the same thing. I plug in the USB cable if I want to use it. Otherwise, it's not connected. So that eliminates printers from contributing to the Wi-Fi pollution of the Ethernet LAN. The other issue is you could, in fact, pick up a virus online with one of these two computers. If that happened, then that virus could possibly spread through your Ether network. So the solution is to have virus protection software that limits access to websites that are suspicious, and also have virus software that scans every file when it's downloaded. So as long as you have this additional virus protection on these two machines, then I think this is a very secure network for home use. Because I'm so paranoid about the experience that happened to me, I've also added another feature for security. This line right here, which connects the ISP router to my router number 2. I unplugged this line and I put a cheap $10 bridge in here. And then I run another cable from the bridge down to router number 2. And then I can turn off the bridge power easily with the switch. So anytime I'm not actually needing to use these devices down here, I turn the switch off, therefore the router is not even connected to the ISP in any way, shape, or form. So it just provides additional security. Nobody can even come in here if they had the key, the SSH key, and if they had the SSH key passphrase, they still couldn't get to it unless I'm actually using these routers. So it cuts down my exposure once again. So this concludes this lesson on my experience with a serious hack and how I counteract it. You may choose other methods, and we'll go on describing other methods in future videos.